Hey guys, Paul here. So I know it's been a while since I've done one of these talking videos over an APS amplifier, but I've just been thinking a lot about Yu-Gi-Oh! And I wanted to share it with you guys, get some opinions. Fair warning, it's going to be not a rant, but maybe not like a completely positive video. There's going to be some critiques. I know some people don't like when I do that, so if you can't handle it, you can get out now. But if you can, then let's talk a little bit about Yu-Gi-Oh! And its sort of target audience and the misalignment that I think Konami has kind of run into in recent years. So I'm going to just set the stage a little bit here. We know Yu-Gi-Oh's been around for like a bazillion years, 20, 25 years. A lot of people got into this game as kids watching this show. But today the game is a lot more, it's more niche for sure, and it's also much more competitive. There's a lot more information that goes around, and a lot of people who play the game today are playing it for the sake of competing in like tournaments or Master Duel or whatever. And there's much more talk about, a meta game and what you're supposed to do, what are combo lines, what is counterplay, hand traps, interactions, rulings. It's a lot more nitty gritty. And particularly online, in that corner, sort of online discourse, people are going to talk mostly about that. When you think of Yu-Gi-Oh, you think of people online discussing combos, where to hand trap something, how to stop things, what's the metagame like, what's the next ban list going to be. The reason I'm talking about this today is because they've recently started playing the Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel deck flexing series at YCS event streams. So what deck flexing is it's the series that Alec and I actually got to be a part of. We were the commentators for it, but it's a three-part series where every episode they got like Konami got different people from different communities to play in these themed Yu-Gi-Oh matches. So it might have been like Justin Wong from the fighting game community, or like VTubers like Rosemi Lovelock, or even like people like Rhymestyle and Syriax. And so they were given themes like old school Yu-Gi-Oh, as in like Legend of Blue Eyes, Magic Ruler, Pharaoh Servant, Metal Raiders, that kind of era, or like anime duels like Stardust versus Elemental Heroes. That was kind of one. That was one of the themes. And so we did this series, and it was pretty fun. I had a great time. It was fun to record, fun to get to meet those people and work with them. And I think Konami did a really great job in the editing. The episodes turned out really well. They decided that they would show these episodes between YCS stream matches, because at YCS events, the feature matches happen, and then like there's a bit of a downtime between them and whatever the next match is. And normally Konami just kind of sits the camera there and like just shoots into the crowd, and nothing really happens. It's kind of boring. So there's some space to fill, and so they decided to, I guess, among other product advertisements and stuff, they put the Master Duel deck flexing videos on there because it's sponsored Konami content. So I guess they're allowed to do that. But there are some people who are some dissenters, will say, who maybe don't think that that's the best decision. Because when you're watching a YCS stream, you don't really want to watch people play, Maneater Bug, like, and Celtic Guardian control decks, right? On stream, you would rather watch people play, the current metagame. What's going on with Runics and Bestials? What's going on with, Rescue Ace and Snake Eyes and SP Little Knight and combos and hand traps and interactions and metagame things. And so I've seen some people online, when they saw that, Konami was playing these sorts of videos on stream, they weren't really satisfied with them. They were like, okay, get this casual content out of my face, right? This isn't the target audience for that. And at first I was like, oh man, that sucks. I worked really hard on those videos. It sucks to hear them say that they don't like them. But when I thought about it a little bit more, I think it does make some sense. Maybe Konami shouldn't be showing these at YCS events that are targeted towards much more hardcore, very competitive types. It begs the question, though, who exactly is the intended audience for Yu-Gi-Oh, and where does Konami stand in terms of like how they reach that crowd? Because for Konami, they kind of have to walk like two lanes, two roads. There's the, keeping the current competitive crowd happy. Those are the people that you're mostly going to meet online that talk about, the nitty gritty of decks, optimizations, how you beat the meta, right? Lots of content today is about that. But then there's also a side that's much more like casual, and their memories of Yu-Gi-Oh are from the show, are from the anime, and they might find themselves a bit disillusioned by all of this, super complex, jargon-filled competitive talk. And so Konami's got to try to market like products and try to expand their reach to more and more people. And to do that, they get these people from other communities when they do like these sorts of initiatives. And so like when that content gets seen by the nitty gritty crowd, they are dissatisfied and don't like it. So I think that in terms of what so for the YCS issue, right? That's a simple matter of, I guess, maybe people just don't want them to include deck flexing in between YCS rounds. I think that'd be pretty reasonable, I suppose. Maybe deck flexing has a better place to be put on the internet. Like it could just be like an ad on Facebook or YouTube in general. But I think the more important conversation to be had here is like, who is Yu-Gi-Oh for, and how does Konami kind of cater to both? And I think it comes down to the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh, like modern Yu-Gi-Oh today, is at an impasse, and it's almost, I hesitate to use this word, it's a little deceptive, a little duplicitous, maybe even dare I say a bit of a lie. So when you look at how Konami sort of markets Yu-Gi-Oh today, you will see like these, like these tins, right? Like this year's hero tins or some playmats and stuff where like they use a lot of imagery of Yugi and Kaiba and Jaden or Yusei and like their boss monsters. It's meant to evoke this sort of sense of like, anime style duels where it's kind of back and forth and there's like an epic boss monster clash and it sort of feels like it's like what you remember when you were a kid, right? These cool anime duels and all that. But then there's a bit of an issue because modern Yu-Gi-Oh, when you actually go to a local card shop or even get on Master Duel, isn't really like that. And so the marketing kind of feels like a bit of a slap in the face because you get baited and switched. You get baited into thinking that, Dark Magician and Blue Eyes are still the cool, strong monsters when in reality they couldn't be kind of further from it, right? Like, we haven't really seen a Dark Magician or a Blue Eyes deck do super well in a competitive tournament like, a YCS in ages. And it's really quite rare. If anything, those are seen as the free win, the free round for a lot of more competitive types of players. And it's not exactly as easy to market, branded or Unchained or like Rescue a Snake Eye to a lot of older fans because they don't recognize those cards. In fact, when I go to events like conventions and things like that, or even just reading the comments in my own like videos, there are a lot of people who kind of want to get back into Yu-Gi-Oh but find themselves alienated not just by the long combos and the long card text, but also just the unfamiliarity of the cards, the fact that Mirror Force is no longer seen as like a good card or Monster Reborn is not seen as a good card. It's not played, and they don't really want to maybe learn what all the new crazy stuff is. And I think to that point, I'd say that, well, there's some like both sides kind of got to maybe give a little to get a little. I think that if you are the quintessential Yugi boomer, as they call them, I think that it is important to kind of like take a step out of your comfort zone and realize that modern Yu-Gi-Oh does have some real like shining sides to it. It's a lot more complex, sure, and there's a lot more moving parts, but I do think that the game is actually at perhaps its most like high octane and interactive that it's ever been. And taking the time to like learn how a lot of today's decks works can be really, I think it can be really rewarding and really gratifying to learn that. I certainly have a fun time like playing, the really harsh modern formats of like Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, but I totally get why somebody might not want to. I think on the other end of the spectrum, though, you've got some competitive players who just can't really find any appreciation for, watching this even just pre-Time Wizard style format being played in front of them. They would much rather see, okay, why isn't Jesse Cotton or Joshua Schmidt coaching these VTubers and like coaching Justin Wong and playing in a modern format with modern cards and showing that instead. And I think that there are some obvious sort of logistic reasons why that couldn't really be like super feasible. But yeah, there's always going to be this sort of mismatch, and I think that for Konami, they could probably help address this issue a little bit. They've done some things, right? Like they've got Time Wizard format, so you can technically play GOAT. That's kind of one of the things that I always will point to for people who just want something that resembles old school Yu-Gi-Oh, or you could play Edison format. But I think that in particular, Master Duel, first of all, needs to have some super like old casual formats. It's got a casual mode. We all know that that is not at all like good. It doesn't really work or function. People go in there and troll. There's no rewards for doing so. It's a bit of a mess. But it would be really easy to do that in Master Duel. And I think even within the TCG, there could still be more sort of like support for these types of formats. Like Konami themselves never really quite want to, or at least that I've noticed, they always kind of keep an arm's length from what they'll describe as like the Heart of the Underdog format or the Time Wizard format. They'll kind of leave it to the players to just, you guys sort of figure out what format you want to play and you guys can play that, and we're going to take a bit of a back seat to it. But I think that they should take a more active role in doing so and maybe actually have a little bit more faith in their modern archetypes and cards. Like, for instance, the Sky Striker archetype gets a lot of support, and it actually has a manga in Japan, but that's not something that we get here. We don't even really get those like Yu-Gi-Oh sort of master guides or whatever, where they explain the lore of different archetypes. We don't get that here in the West, so it's a lot harder for people to connect with archetypes. And so if you're maybe a more casual or returning player who just remembers Celtic Guardian and Mystical Elf, then it might be harder to connect with these new archetypes. But I think that they could make it easier by releasing these lore books or maybe releasing some like animated shorts like what Pokemon does, so that people could get to know who, like Diabellstar and the Snake Eye monsters are, who Albaz and Ecclesia are. And I think if you did that, that would be good, because otherwise it kind of creates a bit of a weird disconnect for somebody who wants to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! In a way that they thought it was like when they were a kid. Because I'll go to conventions and people are like, cosplaying as like Jaden and Cyrus, and they just, make jokes about like, what does Product Reed do? They're having a more innocent and kind of nostalgia-driven fun with the brand and property that is not at all reflected in the game. And if they wanted to hop into the game, they might find themselves feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So, I think Konami's got to take some steps to sort of solve this. Speed Duels is another pretty good one. That's one that I've found myself recommending to people a little bit more as well. So that's really good. I think that the way that they've been doing them as like sealed boxes that are kind of these isolated, kind of boxed experiences that you could play with a group of friends from middle school without actually going online and like kind of looking into the deep nitty gritty of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is actually for the best. I really do believe that. I do think that competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Online today, kind of getting into that community and that discourse, it's rough. I mean, there was like a recent argument on Twitter about somebody saying that they thought that like Earth's Arctic was like a decent deck, and people got angry at them and said like, what? No, you're wrong. Earth's Arctic is trash. How dare you defend it? And like, I mean, it got really pretty personal and like harsh. And so I sometimes tell people like, listen, if you want to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! Today, decide how you want to get into it, right? Do you want to get into a kind of a very intense competitive online community? Not saying it's bad, but it's intense. Or do you maybe just want to enjoy something that's more akin to what you played in like middle school or something? If so, don't look online for anything. Just buy a speed duel box, grab a few friends who also don't know anything, play it, then pack it back up, and you can do it again some other time, and that's it, right? It's rough to say it that way, but as it stands in Yu-Gi-Oh! It sometimes feels like those are the two options that you get. Bridging that gap is going to be a difficult one. I know they've got it rough. I think that still though, they could do a better job of marketing the modern things to people in ways that help to teach them more, and help them connect with the archetypes and the monsters that are being shown, as opposed to just showing them Yugi and Kaiba, but then like, kind of pulling the rug out from under them. Of course, if you are a super casual old school head, it might be worth it to take a look at what the new game is and try to better understand it before you just get online and complain. And if you're a super casual type, understand that not all content is even necessarily made for you, right? Like deck flexing probably wasn't made for the competitive types. It was made for the casual, sort of passerby audience. And that not everybody enjoys, getting into the nitty gritty of combo decks and Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a tricky one, and I guess it's not even really like a new debate. This is something that's kind of a tale as old as time, so as always, let me know what you guys think about it down in the comments, how you feel about this discussion or debate or whatever you want to call it, and how you think Konami or players could do better, or if you think that this isn't really very much of an issue at all and I am just making mountains out of molehills, as I guess I'm known to do, according to the comments anyway. So yeah, that's going to be it. Cool, sweet. I'll be back with maybe more videos like this because this was fun. All right, see you guys in the next one. Fast turn.